Okay, welcome everyone. You are all superstars for having this much energy this late in the day. I just watched all the groups working together. We're very animated, and I don't think anyone here wanted to stop. So luckily, you don't have to stop.
Thank you very much.
We have 30 more minutes to talk about something that's really interesting, and that's the future of technology. And the future of technology is all about education, because it's through education that we're bringing a whole generation of young people, and they're becoming the creators of technology of the future. It's not me as an engineer. I'm not creating technology that will be used in 20 years or 30 years. It's our children that are doing that. Now, I come from an organization called the Microbit Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization that is helping children all around the world get set up with digital skills. So learning how to create with technology. And we're actually, interestingly enough, a spin-off of the BBC, and we're based in the UK. Now, what I'm going to be talking about is how the barriers for getting into technology have come down by incredible amounts over the past 20 years. It's easy for anyone to create with technology today, anywhere in the world, and how education is the key for us bringing that ability to young people. So we'll talk about how we can use something called physical computing to give young people the motivation to get into technology and really to achieve their dreams, right? If they want to become an inventor, an engineer, a scientist, a teacher, or a doctor, right? We want to give kids the skills to do that using technology. Now, my background is an engineer. I was trained to be an engineer in electronics and computers. And I've had a really interesting career in applying that to all kinds of problems. My specialty is the Internet of Things, so connecting things to the Internet, like streetlights, electric meters, cars. And I come from Finland. Everyone knows where Finland is, right? Well, my wife is a teacher. Not just a teacher, but a teacher education researcher. So I have an interesting background and some insight into how we can teach education across all subjects using the Finnish model. So I'll be talking about the Finnish model, what we're doing in Singapore, and many other places in the world. Now, my vision is that in the future, every child will be an inventor. We don't have any choice, right? The problems in our society that we're creating for the next generations, from clean water to dealing with waste, to finding new ways of producing materials which are biodegradable and healthy for people. These are all problems that our children need to solve using technology. And it's our job to enable them to do that. We don't have to teach them the way or even the right technology. We need to teach them the concepts for things like computational thinking. We need to teach them problem-solving skills. Even just confidence in technology is something that's missing from my generation still today. And my own mission, the personal mission I'm on around the world, is to empower 100 million children, parents, and teachers with the digital skills they need to succeed in the future. And that's something we're doing right now all around the world. I'll show you more examples of where we're doing that. Now, the thing to understand about technology is that over the past 20 years, it has become incredibly powerful and incredibly available and cheap. Everyone here in Singapore and around most of the developed world walks around with a supercomputer in their pocket. In the 1980s, this would have cost tens of millions of dollars worth of technology just to make this happen. Physical computing, so little computers that we can embed in our everyday life, would have cost $10,000 or more 10 years ago just to be able to develop a product, where today we can get little things like this that cost under $15, and anybody can do that. Cloud computing is cheaper than ever. Cloud computing has enabled almost anyone to start an online service, an online business, right? Advertise what they're doing or interconnect with other people around the world. And that's something that wasn't possible in the 1980s and was just becoming possible in the 90s. And then finally, artificial intelligence. And this is really important. I'll get back to AI and what it means. Artificial intelligence is really becoming available. There right now are APIs on the web where you can go and ask an AI machine to go and answer questions for you, like an automated chatbots. That's available now, and in many cases, it's free to get started. So that's all bringing down the barriers of technology. Now, a little bit about the future. Now, everybody knows what this is from, right? Back to the Future. If you're from the right generation. Great movie in the 1980s. And a bunch of writers in Hollywood had a lot of fun trying to predict the future, right? That was adults trying to predict the future. Well, we don't exactly have hovering cars with, that's a fusion trash compactor in the back, by the way. Neither do we have hoverboards exactly. We have these rolling boards everywhere that are really annoying, but no hoverboards. We do have self-lacing shoes, but that's just because Nike did a big gimmick around the movie. So we got most of the future wrong, right? The interesting thing is that it's really our children that will be inventing this future, right? We shouldn't be making movies ourselves as adults. We should ask kids what the future will be. Because it's their invention, it's their creativity that will make it happen. And it's not just about the future, it's about technology. Because in 10 to 15 years, 20 years, the technology that we're using today to create, to code, to make computers will be totally different. The technology I started using in the 1980s, I started on a Commodore 64 when I was growing up. That doesn't exist anymore today. We don't program in BASIC. Neither do we make our own games line by line out of a magazine, which I did. Technology has changed dramatically. And in 10 to 15 years, it won't exist anything like it does today. So what we're teaching kids is skills, not technology. We're not teaching them coding or a coding language. We're teaching them the ability to think logically, the ability to solve problems using technology. And that skill will pass on to them for all of their life. So that's really important to remember. Don't get too stuck on today's technology. There's another reason for that. In the future, jobs are changing. They're changing rapidly today. Already, 90% of jobs that exist in developed countries require ICT skills. That's changing even more dramatically, where 65% of jobs don't even exist. And I'll give you a great example. We all know about coding, right? Well, imagine a world where instead of coding computers, there'll be a job of training computers. Can you imagine? Instead of doing if statements and coding the computer to do what you want, you'd be like, okay, computer, let's see, we're going to teach you to roll over today, right? Okay, you do it like this, and good computer, that was right. That will be a real job in the future thanks to AI. So what AI is doing is actually removing the need for manual programming. Sure, somebody will program the AI, and somebody will program the robot or device, but actually we'll need really smart people who understand problems and problem solving and computational thinking to train the AIs to do their job. So jobs are changing, and that's why we need to equip children with digital skills and the right type of digital invention skills. But what's the role of teachers in the future? This is a subject I want to breach. It's something that we don't usually talk about. Some people have really extreme views, and actually I think you'll like my opinion. But first, a video. This is something that we did together with the BBC at the end of this school year in the UK. It went on national television, and it was a fun little piece about, well, what if teachers became robots? Go ahead. Those are Cybermen from Doctor Who. So that was a fun piece we did to get kids more interested in robots and technology and how fun it can be to interact with technology. And I know what you're going to think. I'm a technologist. In my opinion, in 10 years, there won't be any teachers. But you're wrong. Actually, I think teachers are becoming even more important than they ever have been. And the reason is that technology by itself doesn't teach people, right? It's our job as educators to facilitate and mentor and motivate young people to feel that success that they can find with technology. And in many cases, all it takes is us to identify someone who has a gift, a young person who's interested in something, and we're just encouraging them to go and follow their dreams. And probably all of you have had the same experience, but in my life, I've had 2 teachers who have done that for me, one in high school and one in university, who just by pushing me in the right direction completely changed my life and got me to where I am today and who I am today. And that's never going to change. Even if we have AI, if we have all the new technology in the world, we still need to have people teaching people. So we shouldn't be talking about do we need teachers or not. I think it's a stupid conversation. Now, something we've gotten into in many schools is coding. And I think coding's great, right? It's a good skill to have, but like I said, in 15 years, we won't be coding anymore, we'll be training. Something we have found to be super useful in all the schools that we've done work is something called physical computing. And physical computing is where we don't have kids code just on a screen, but we actually have them integrate technology into their own projects. And this is an example. This is a microbit. This is a tiny little computer that they can integrate in art, in robots, in all kinds of projects, music even, that they're creating. And what this really encourages is multi-subject learning, right? We're using this in craft, music, art, in addition to traditional subjects like math, physics, science. And it promotes learning by trial, right? We're really having the kids go and try to build something and make it better. And the result is kind of magical, right? What we're seeing is kids that are much more engaged, they're much more motivated with the technology creation. So they might be learning to code, but they're doing it because they're really motivated to build something that works. And we're still studying what the psychology is behind it, but we know it really does work. I'll talk about some research in a moment. Now, something interesting about this is it's also changing the theory of learning behind how we teach with technology. Instructionism is great for many subjects, right? Traditional math, history, geography, that's wonderful. But when it comes to technology and physical computing, we're finding that constructionism is becoming much more useful. So this is a concept made popular by Seymour Papert when he wrote a book really talking about how young people get engaged with technology, right? How they're creating rather than being taught. And what we're finding is in digital making, right? In using technology in the classroom, the same approach is working. So personal learning, project-based learning, student-led learning. It's really interesting how that applies to technology in this case as well. Now, we've had some interesting research come out of the UK on physical computing, too. This is a paper by Sue Sentence out of King's College London. And she wrote an article where, when we did the first deployment of physical computing in the UK, she studied teachers and students. It was a survey-based research paper that showed that actually physical computing makes a real difference in the motivation, the tangibility, it makes it real, the collaboration, the creativity between kids. And my favorite quote from this study, and I'm going to say it directly as the child said, is, it's quite like easy to code. It's not really hard, so it's like you can create cool stuff without it being impossible. And that really makes a difference. I don't know if anybody's seen the digital maker stand from the IMDA outside on the show floor, where we have all the projects from the kids. That's the same kind of environment that this paper came from. And you can see it there too, right? Kids say that, I had this idea and I could make it. It wasn't that hard. And that's what we need to hear from kids. I could do it. It wasn't that hard. And from teachers as well, by the way. We need to hear the same thing. I encourage you to read this paper. It's really interesting. Now, physical computing is also a journey, right? This is something we're using not just to learn, we're using it throughout our whole life. We're using this in high school and university when you get into engineering and science, and we're using it in our professional lives. So it's important to understand there's no one-size solution that you use for everything. For example, in education, primary and secondary, we use microbit a lot. That's where I come from as a nonprofit. And we're using it because it's very simple. It's for teachers and kids who don't know anything about technology. But that doesn't mean it's great for university students, right? When they start to get into advanced things, you use things like Raspberry Pi or Arduino. You've heard of those. They let you do a lot more advanced things. They're a lot geekier, too, and a lot harder to learn. But once you're into it, they're very powerful. And for professional engineers like me, right, we have professional tools. This board on the right, that's a professional board that you can buy, and you can use it to make things like the Nest thermostat. So the Nest thermostat, really fancy, really cool. It uses the same technology. The other thing up here is an insulin pen that's wirelessly connected. So for diabetes patients, you can track how your insulin usage, how your blood sugar levels go over time, also using the same technology. And what's really interesting is that it's the same technology in all of this. When kids learn to use this, when they're making these fun little projects, actually they're using the same stuff that people are using to make real products in industry. So a big trend we talk about today is Maker Pro, going from education to Maker Pro. It's a really interesting journey that kids go on. I had a boy, a 16-year-old boy, on stage with me at BET earlier this year in London. And this boy had gotten into microbit, and he got really, really, really motivated by it. And he said, well, why don't I start my own company? So he actually started his own company at 17 and started making these accessories, and just incredible, really incredible story how he went from student to businessman around his hobby. So it's a journey, lots of different tools that we have that we can use. Now, I'm going to tell you about a project that we did in the UK that was really interesting. So does anybody know the BBC Micro? Who's an old-timer? Long beard, I could see that. So the BBC Micro was a computer that the BBC helped create in the UK back in the 1980s. And the reason was that there was no literacy of computing at all in society, right? People didn't know how to use computers outside of a few very special geeks. And so the BBC wanted to bring something out to the public, and they created this little computer to do it. And it was wonderful. I grew up on a Commodore 64. It's about the same kind of thing. And it let us create. We made our own games. We did everything ourselves on these little microcomputers in the 1980s. And 35 years later, the BBC decided to do the same thing again. It said that all of our society is becoming digitized, right? Digital technology is everywhere, yet people don't have the skills they need coming out of school to make use of it, or even to participate in technology creation. So we had a very big project at the BBC to go create the next way of learning about technology. And we tried lots of things. Do we do online programming? Is it a platform? Is it a community? What's the way we motivate students to get involved? And in the end, we came down to physical computing. What worked best was to have the students actually create with their hands, right? Really get involved with the technology. And that created the BBC Microbit. And what's really interesting is that we gave away 1 million of these last year to every single grade 7 student in the UK. Now, for those of you familiar with the UK system, that's about 11, 12 years old. Every single student in the whole country got one of these and used it in school. And that's the first time physical computing's ever been deployed at that kind of scale. And the result was wonderful. In the end, teachers really got involved and engaged. I'll show you some research studies from that. Students were motivated. The BBC made Doctor Who shows, live lessons on TV. The whole society was along with technology. And that's special, right? That really was the effect that we're looking for. As a result, though, 70 countries all around the world came and contacted the BBC and said, we want to do this too. This is wonderful. Singapore is one of those, actually. I'll talk about Singapore in a moment. I thought the woo was for us, but oh, it was somebody else. Somebody clearly has a funner conference than we do, so we'll go check that out next. Now, having 1 million devices across an entire school system lets you do some really interesting research, and we've done that. And interesting results. So, for example, 87% of all kids that have been using physical computing in class said it made computing much more interesting, right? They said that, hey, this is kind of cool. I like this. This is interesting. More importantly, we had a 70% increase in the number of girls interested in studying more computing. And this is after just a few weeks of using physical computing in their studies. They said that, yeah, I could study more computing. This is kind of interesting. I can do it. And this is a huge thing in the UK. Only 9% of the workforce in the UK is female in STEM. It's horribly low. And so getting more girls involved with STEM, engineering, science, technology in general, is really a big thing. So we're really encouraged by the interest in girls. Go girls, yes. I have 2 girls myself, 9 and 11, so I'm a fan. And more importantly, right, we're seeing teachers become more confident in their teaching when they're using technology that's easy. So half of the teachers that use this said that they felt more confident about their teaching with technology after using it. They said that, actually, this wasn't that hard. I can do it too. That's something we hear all the time from teachers. Once they try it, they go, Ed, that wasn't that bad. I could do it if the kids can do it, right? That's the right attitude. We want to see more of that. Now, a really special project that we kicked off earlier this year in the UK is libraries. So libraries are becoming, in many places around the world, a kind of community center, right? It's a place that kids go to spend time after school. My kids do in Finland. People go to do workshops. They go to learn new things, old people and young people. And so we're on a mission in the UK at the moment to deploy microbit, so physical computers, to every library in the UK. There's about 5,000 libraries in total. We're already in 1,000, over 1,000 libraries. And the response has been great, right? Librarians tell us that kids are coming in all the time. They're asking to borrow the microbit. They come and show us their projects. We do workshops with the kids. It's really becoming more interactive with technology, right? They're not just renting a movie. They're going and making a game, and they share it with others. So libraries could be a key part of how we're teaching kids outside of school as well, among other things like community centers here in Singapore that I'll talk about. So really exciting. I want to see more work with libraries in the future. And this is a trend that's happening all around the world. Just in our program alone, we're dealing with millions of children in 100+ countries. And this is kind of the hotspot map of where all the activity is. And of course, you see lots in North America, tons in Europe, lots in Singapore, China, Australia. Wonderful things that are going on. We hear lots of great stories, and I want to share a few of those with you right now. Now, Singapore, of course, has been one of our early adopters of physical computing. The Digital Maker program that you saw outside has been extraordinary, not just because it's introduced this in schools, primary and secondary schools, where almost half of all schools in Singapore have already been deployed in the program, but also in the community centers involving young and old people. I had the pleasure of visiting this school this morning, the Montfort Junior School. Incredible, the energy from the students, the interest from the teachers. They even created a maker space where kids can go and work on projects after school. And these are some of the examples of projects that I saw. And my favorite was the backpack detector. So kids were quite concerned that somebody might steal something from their backpack while they were in class. Okay, fair enough, I worry about that too. So they made an infrared motion detector, a wireless one, and they put it in their backpack. And if somebody opens their backpack, they get an alarm and some lights that go off. And the kids were very proud about this. And they caught me. I tried to steal something from their backpack. I have a picture showing them catching me. So very interesting. And something really unique in Singapore is the inclusion of the old. When we talk about our education programs in the UK, we're talking about young children only. Same in Finland. But in Singapore, they're actually including adults and elderly in the programs. So this is an example from a community center where they're working with older people and younger people on projects. I'm going to go visit the community center this evening and check it out for myself. So this is really groundbreaking. I think this is something we have to look at in many places in the world. How do we also get digital skills of older people up so they feel comfortable in today's society? And Finland. Let me talk a little bit about Finland. Finland's really interesting as an education country. You've probably heard a lot about test result scores, etc. But I'll tell you the secret behind it. A, really good infrastructure, like we have here in Singapore. Good schools that have the equipment they need. B, consistent teachers, so everyone has the same teaching background. And C, curriculum at a national level, which is really innovative. And that's always been the case in Finland. It's always been kind of 5 to 10 years ahead. Last year, we introduced a new curriculum at a national level across the country, which does something interesting. And I've got a link at the bottom of this. You can go look and read more about it. We actually introduced technology into every subject at every school level, starting from primary all the way through high school, where teachers are integrating technology in every subject. We do not have a separate coding. There's no separate coding subject. You actually integrate it in math, in biology, in physics, in art, in music, everything. And you do it on a project basis. So I talked about constructionism. That's something that's embedded in the Finnish education system. So really unique and really interesting, and I'm watching that. I'm going to visit and working with universities in Finland to understand how that's working. This is a picture from a workshop that I helped do earlier this year in August, where we trained 100 teachers to work with physical computing. And as you can see on the right, physical computing is messy work, right? That's painting. We're making boxes, we're painting, we're gluing, drilling, coding, right? It's combining hands-on skills with electronics and coding skills. And the teachers really got into it, and this is something that's becoming very popular in Finland as well at the moment. Now, as a nonprofit, our mission is not just to work with the developed world. We're also working with the developing world, oftentimes giving away hardware to get them started. And this is Sri Lanka. We had a really interesting program started in Sri Lanka from one guy. One guy. His name is Prab. Amazing guy. He's probably 26 years old, 27 years old, works for Microsoft, really interested in technology. He came to the UK and he found one of these microbit things. And he said, I'm going to take this back home. And I'm going to use it with my communities because they need to learn this. And he wrote us a letter and said that, hey, could you help me out, Microbit, and send me some devices so I can start a volunteer coding club. And we did that. We sent him 30 microbits in the post. He started telling us about his volunteers, and we said, wow, this looks great. And soon he has 200 volunteers and thousands of kids that have gone through his program. And that's just incredible, right? What people at a grassroots level can do, outside of school as well, right, to get kids interested in technology. And this has actually now gone to the government level. The government's become interested then in what's been going on in Sri Lanka and is starting to support what they're doing. So really, really encouraging. Even more interesting, we recently did a project together with UNICEF and the British Council. Now, I don't know how on top of you are on the refugee situation in Europe, but it's critical. Refugees in Europe are a huge problem, both for war zones in the Middle East as well as European societies. And we have a large number of people that are stuck in Greece. Stuck. They're in refugee camps. They don't have anything to do. The kids are bored, but also dangerous. We have a lot of problems with gangs, a lot of problems with kids just not going anywhere in their life. So we put a program together where we came and taught physical computing to kids in the refugee camps. So we have special classrooms with IT technology. And this got them into sports, learning more about English, learning more about music. But most importantly, what psychologists in the camp noticed is it got older kids helping younger kids with the technology. The older kids were more confident with computers. They might have studied that in their home country. And they were actually engaging with younger kids. And the psychologists said they've never seen that before at any time in the camps. Normally, the kids are in gangs, right? The older kids are doing their thing. They don't want anything to do with the younger kids. But now they were working together. So kids teaching kids is a really interesting thing that we're seeing happen. Now, in summary, I have 3 really simple things for you to take home. 1, digital skills and creativity are for everyone. Everybody in society, from old people to young people, we need it. We shouldn't feel shy about using technology. And importantly, we also need to teach people to create with technology. It's not enough to be a consumer, right? Don't just be happy with what you see on Facebook and what you're fed by Google, right? We need to teach kids to create and solve their own problems. 2, teachers matter, right? Teachers are important, so supporting digital skills and just the dreams of young people, right, can change their life. It's little things, right? Like that little bit of encouragement to send that child to the coding club after school to make that project that they were really motivated about. That might change their life and what they go on to be. Really simple things. So teachers matter. And finally, physical computing works, right? Bringing technology into normal subjects, like art, make a big difference, right? It lets you create a place where kids can be creative as they want to be and learn about technology, learn about coding at the same time. And it keeps them motivated too, much more motivated to learn when they have something to create. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
We do have time for a couple of questions. If anybody has a burning question that they would like to ask Zach. Or maybe it's just the end of the day.
You sound Australian. Okay, no problem. So the way microbit works is it's freely available for anyone. You just buy some. These are about $15 a piece. They're really cheap. We make them to go to developing countries, right? So they're affordable. In some countries, there's programs, like in Singapore, there's a program where a school can sign up to get microbits in their school. There's some things like that starting in Australia. We actually have a lot of users in Australia, but I'm not sure it's reached the national school level. I think there's some Catholic school groups that are already doing some microbit programs. But I've seen many teachers start by just buying a few, bringing them into the class and trying them out. Lots of teaching materials available online that you can use.
So you say it's open to schools in Singapore. Is that all schools? And if so, is there a website that we can go to for that process? That's question one. Question two is for ordering. Sometimes it's hard to get things shipped into Singapore.
Ah.
I've got a friend who's bringing me one microbit, but if I get hooked and I want more, whoa, this is sounding a little different. It was different in my head.
Hooked is great. I like
right?
hooked.
Okay.
I'm hooked. So I can answer both questions.
Okay.
So actually, you can buy these in Singapore. There's resellers. You can look on our webpage. There's several resellers that have these in Singapore. No problem.
In physical stores?
On the web.
Okay.
Web stores. Yep. But they're definitely available. Actually, one of them was outside. But to answer your other question, you can look at the IMDA Digital Makers website, and there's everything about their programs, lessons, and how to sign up. But you'd definitely be welcome. And then it's for primary and secondary schools.
We've got one more over here.
Yeah.
How about Malaysia? How do I buy that? Yeah.
So we only have some things starting in Malaysia. I've started to hear of some people starting to use microbit in Malaysia. But if I were you, I would just go to Singapore, import a bunch, go back, start using them in school. It's totally okay. And that's how the best things start with microbit. People are just using it anywhere they are.
How about you appoint me as a reseller? Anyway, that was pushing. Yeah, but it's a great effort, definitely. How have the feedback from people at the refugee camp compared to the students in Finland? So is it comparable? What are the benefits for specific groups of students?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the group. Exactly, the group of students is important. In refugee camps, right, the problem is giving kids something to feel confident about, to feel like they're succeeding, and have ways for them to work together. So microbit, just physical computing, right, was giving them that outlet. In the UK, our biggest problem is girls. Getting girls interested in STEM. It's really, really hard. Parents are encouraging their girls to become lawyers or doctors or something else, but not an engineer, right? And changing that mindset has been the important thing. And yes, we've seen that result where girls are becoming more friendly. And it's a lot about art, right? We're able to introduce this into art and music and other subjects where girls are already interested, so it becomes natural. In Finland, it's more balanced. We have a more balance between girls and boys. And what we're seeing is an interest to use technology and learn more about it in general. So just motivating the kids to use it in their studies more efficiently. Online coding is so-so for certain kids. Certain kids get into it, but other kids just aren't that interested. It's not physical enough. It's too abstract. Or they just can't sit still long enough, right? It's too much sitting at a keyboard where they want to go create and build. So it depends on the place, right? It's lots of different problems we can solve if we apply the technology in the right way.
We've got another question. We've unleashed them all now.
Thank you very much. This is very exciting to see. And I also learned how to program on a Commodore. The question I have is much more crass. If this is a nonprofit and you're producing millions of these, what's your business model? I mean, how do you survive?
Yeah, I can explain that. So Microbit works as a nonprofit, and that means that we make these for almost free. So we don't take a profit from Microbits. What we do is we use just enough to operate all the services for free. So the online services, the teaching material, the tutorials that we do. And then we do a lot of fundraising on top of that for what we call our sponsorship programs. So we give away Microbits to developing countries, teachers that are working with disadvantaged children. So for example, UK Youth in the UK works with really problematic gang kids, and we donate Microbits to them. So it's a combination of operating things for free, so teachers have everything they need, and giving these away whenever we can to programs.
Got one more here for you.
And I'm going to cheat and sneak in 2 questions.
Sure.
The first question is, what is the, I realize this is a fairly new program, but having said that, what can you answer about, you alluded in terms, it sounded kind of like anecdotal evidence, but what is the benefit of this beyond the cool factor? And in answering that, what sort of longitudinal or even non-longitudinal studies do you have to demonstrate that?
Yep.
And then the second question I'm going to sneak in, because I was curious from a school viewpoint, if cost is not so much an issue, what is the benefit of this as compared to a Raspberry Pi or to an Arduino? I mean, there's different ones. Or is it's not an either or, they're for different things?
Yeah. Let me answer the second question first. I had a slide about that. So it's important to realize that there's a difference between using something really in the school setting in the primary and secondary level, right? We're dealing with teachers who don't know technology as their specialty, and we're dealing with kids who don't know technology either. So it really has to be focused on always working and being very simple. And having a tight success loop is what I call it. So when you make something, it works, and then you make it a little bit better. That has to happen really fast, within a couple minutes, or people lose interest. That really sets this kind of physical computing made for schools apart from things like the Raspberry Pi and Arduino. Those are more for hobbyists and makers and more advanced kids. When you get into high school and university, they're very geeky. They take more time to get into, but they're very powerful. I think that makes a big difference. But you're right, for many schools, like in Norway, for example, in Hong Kong, here in Singapore, the cost of buying 10 of these for a classroom is kind of irrelevant compared to all the Chromebooks and tablets and things that we have to acquire. It doesn't really make a big deal. But it has to be appropriate for teachers. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. And we see that with a lot of technologies. A lot of things that have been created for something else, makers or for pros, and you try to bring that into a classroom, it's really hard to make use of it. And so we do only schools. We don't do anything else. To answer your first question, we don't know yet. We've deployed the first microbits in the beginning of 2016. We already have several million users. We have enough of a broad deployment that we've been able to do survey-based research pretty quickly. We haven't been in long enough to do longitudinal studies. We've done survey-based research at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year. And that's something we've learned a little bit from, like how teachers are adapting to it. But we'll have to learn more as the academic studies go on. And we are working with several universities on their own academic studies and how they're finding this. But I think what really matters is we're giving the tools to bring technology in the classrooms that seem to work. Kids are motivated, teachers are motivated, because coding and computer science, it is coming to schools, right? We have it in UK curriculum. It will come to US curriculum eventually. It will come to Singapore curriculum eventually, right? And in many other places, it's already coming. Japan's decided to introduce it by 2020. So we will have to do computing in schools, but we want to make it fun, right? Let's make it integrated in what we already do and not an extra burden. So we're seeing the need, but yeah, the studies we need much more of. And we're very interested as well in what works, what doesn't work, right?
Okay, I think we'll probably leave it there. Are you able to hang around for a little bit in case people have other questions?
Absolutely, I'll be here.
Okay, so if you've got any more burning questions, please do come and chat to that directly. On behalf of me and my team from EduTech, thank you very much for staying with us to the end of day 2. For those of you that have a 3-day pass for the workshops, they'll all be taking place on level 3 tomorrow, which is the floor where we had all the individual tracks yesterday. There will be registration points there throughout the level for you to register for, so please do make your way there in good time for the start of the workshops. There will be no exhibition tomorrow, it is just the workshops, but from me and my team at Terrapin, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy tomorrow, and we'll see you next year. Thank you very much.